2024 was a very strange and turbulent year for the Georgia Bulldogs passing offense. Though Georgia ultimately ended the year with an SEC championship win and college football playoff appearance, all anyone talked about throughout the year was the amount of dropped passes, interceptions, and all-around shaky play that plagued the offense. It was truly a rough season for Georgia through the air. The Bulldogs, of course, led the entire FBS in dropped passes with 36, and quarterback Carson Beck had a stretch of 6 games where he threw 12 interceptions to 11 touchdowns. This offseason, Georgia went all in to address the wide receiver situation and will also feature new starters at quarterback and multiple offensive line positions. In this video, we will look at the personnel Georgia has this season to answer whether or not the passing game can improve in 2025. Let's start off by looking at the key departures. The most notable departure from Georgia's passing offense, and likely the whole team overall, is of course Carson Beck, who transferred to Miami after 5 years in Athens and 2 as a starter. He entered 2024 with a ton of hype after an impressive first year starting, and was even in the conversation for the number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. But things didn't go quite as expected. Like we said earlier, Beck struggled with turnovers and consistency, with a 6-game stretch producing 12 interceptions as Georgia lost on the road at Alabama and Ole Miss. It felt like he wasn't in sync with his receivers, and once the drops started to mount up, like he couldn't trust them at all. Beck's Georgia tenure ended in the SEC championship with that elbow injury right before halftime, and he later transferred to the U. Now, as much has been made by certain Georgia fans about Beck's supposed attitude issues or turnovers, I would argue that he was the reason Georgia's passing offense had any success at all in 2024. Georgia's receivers simply could not get open or catch the ball for most of the year, and there was virtually no threat of a real running game all season either. This meant Beck had to shoulder most of the offensive responsibility, and Georgia lived and died with him. Sometimes that meant stuff like the Alabama loss, but Beck also balled out against the top 10 Tennessee squad and brought Georgia back from the dead against Georgia Tech almost by himself. My point is, overall Beck did a lot more to elevate Georgia's offense than he did to hurt it. Yes, he turned it over a lot, and a lot of that is on him, but he also had to put the offense on his back the whole year, which is going to lead to some hero ball. He wasn't protected well, and his receivers couldn't catch, and the offense will fail more often than not when those are the circumstances. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I don't think there are that many quarterbacks that could have produced more than Carson Beck did last year in Georgia's offense. Speaking of dropped passes, Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith both left for the NFL Draft this offseason. Lovett led the team in receptions last year with 59, but failed to outproduce his 2023 season and didn't make many big plays save for a 2-touchdown fourth quarter against Georgia Tech. For someone who was supposed to be the reliable slot guy all year, he was pretty disappointing and one of 3 Bulldogs who finished the season with at least 5 drops. Smith led the Bulldogs in receiving yards last year with 817, but also led all Power 4 receivers with 10 dropped passes. Though his hands were certainly an issue, he was a legit deep threat and just about Georgia's only consistent source of big plays through the air. I know he wasn't exactly a fan favorite, but Smith was an overall positive player who has long speed that's really hard to replace. The Bulldogs also sent off 3 starting interior offensive linemen to the NFL in Tate Ratledge, Jared Wilson, and Dylan Fairchild. Injuries plagued Georgia's offensive line in 2024 and led to the unit underachieving as a whole, but these were 3 very talented individual players that meant a lot to the program. The Bulldogs believe they have the guys ready to step up behind them in Micah Morris, Drew Bobo, and Juan Gaston, but it'll be a tall order. Now we'll get to Georgia's expected starter at quarterback in Gunnar Stockton, who was forced into action after Beck went down in the SEC championship and helped steer the Bulldogs to a win in overtime. He then started in the college football playoff against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, where he completed 20 of 32 passes for 234 yards and a touchdown, with Georgia of course falling 23-10. That's pretty valuable experience for a first-time starter, and it also helps that Stockton's in his 4th year with the program and knows the offense. With all the question marks that Georgia had this offseason, they'd have even more if there was a transfer quarterback coming in trying to learn the entire playbook in one offseason. From what we've seen of Stockton on the field, he's got a nice deep ball and is willing to hang tough in the pocket and absorb hits to get the throw off. He has a stocky build, no pun intended, and is listed at 6'1", 215 pounds. Stockton's toughness also shows up when he uses his legs. I'd stop short of calling him a true dual threat, but he's a physical runner who isn't afraid to lower his shoulder at the end of a run. That might be a little terrifying to Georgia's offensive staff, and we already saw him get injured that way after he got rocked in the SEC championship and had to come out of the game. Stockton definitely needs to learn to protect himself better and avoid those types of hits, which can be hard when that kind of toughness is just ingrained in your DNA as a player. In the event of an injury, the next man up for Georgia at quarterback will be redshirt freshman Ryan Puglisi, who battled Stockton for the job this spring and was reportedly impressive in camp. Next up, we'll look at some returning players expected to play a role in the passing game. We'll start with Colby Young, who played in 5 games for Georgia last year, including 2 starts, and caught 11 passes for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns before a season-ending suspension in October due to an arrest for domestic assault. Young has since had those charges dropped, and after the Diego Pavia ruling said JUCO years aren't real, he is set to return to the Bulldogs. Of course, your opinion of how his legal situation was handled by all the different parties involved is entirely up to you, but purely from a football standpoint, Young was a promising player for the Bulldogs in 2024. He's a big, physical ex-receiver standing at 6'3" and 215 pounds, and emerged as a solid red zone third down contested catch threat in those 5 games last year. Once he was suspended, his loss was felt immediately. Georgia's other receiver in that ex-mold, Ra Thomas, had already been dismissed from the team before the season due to his own legal troubles, and the Bulldogs were sorely missing a big-bodied receiver who could win one-on-ones on the outside. Young should provide that and pick up where he left off in 2024. Senior Dylan Bell is also back after catching 43 passes for 466 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. Bell is a gifted athlete with the ball in his hands, but he struggled after Young's suspension and ended the year with 6 drops in Georgia's last 7 games. With Young back and some other additions that we will get to, it's fair to assume Bell won't command as many of the targets this year, but I would expect him to still make some plays in a scaled-down role. It also helps that he's moving back to the Z after having to play X last year with Young out. Moving over to the tight end position, Georgia has Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky returning for 2025. Delp probably won't wow anyone with his statistical production this year, but he's super athletic, blocks like a madman, and should once again be a big red zone threat after helping out a ton there last year. Lucky isn't the same level blocker, but he has a bit more receiving upside than Delp. He's got great breakaway speed for the position and runs pretty tight routes. Neither of these guys are going to put up Brock Bowers level numbers or anything, but they're both athletic freaks in their own right and will bring something to the passing game. Redshirt freshman Jaden Riddell is also in the mix at tight end after attracting some buzz in camp. It'll be tough to carve out a role with Delp and Lucky already there, but Georgia uses a ton of 2 tight end sets, and I think Riddell is a sneaky sleeper this year for some playing time. Now let's talk about the portal receivers. Georgia brought in 2 big-time transfers in Zachariah Branch from USC and Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. Branch is poised to take over in the slot for Georgia after catching 47 passes for 503 yards and a touchdown in 2024 for USC. He's a popular pick to be Georgia's first 1,000-yard receiver since 2002, and while that would admittedly be quite the statistical jump, it's easy to get on the hype train once you see him play. Branch has freakish burst off the line with plenty of long speed to go with it. He's dynamic in the open field and a threat to score at any time, and was also a productive returner for the Trojans. This was a huge haul for Georgia, and he should be an impact player right away. So should Noah Thomas, who joined the Bulldogs after leading A&M in receiving last year with 39 catches for 574 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's a big outside receiver at 6'5", 205 pounds, and his contested catchability and red zone upside are a nice complement to Branch's skill set. Thomas and Young will bring a level of size and strength to the receiver position that Georgia did not have last year, and that in turn should open up a lot for Branch underneath in the slot. Georgia also signed 3 4-star freshmen at receiver in Talon Taylor, CJ Wiley, and Landon Roldan, 2 4-star tight ends in Elias Williams and Ethan Barber, and a pair of 3-star receivers in Tyler Williams and Thomas Blackshear. It's unlikely that many or all of these guys are immediate contributors, but expect at least one of them to make the rotation in some capacity, similar to how Nitro Tuggle popped up for a bit later last year. Mike Bobo, father of Drew, is back for another year as offensive coordinator, and he is not the most beloved figure in Georgia football history. Bobo took a lot of criticism last year for his play calling, some warranted and some not. Now, I don't think Mike Bobo is some offensive wizard or anything by any means, but I do think he was severely handcuffed last year by Georgia's poor receiver play and lack of a run game. He deserves a ton of credit for his performance against Georgia Tech, Tennessee, and in both Texas games, especially once Beck went down. Bobo has said that the focus this year is bringing back the run game and allowing the passing offense to flow off of that, which makes a lot of sense when you have a first-year starter whose life you want to make easier. I'd be willing to bet that Bobo and the rest of the offensive staff took one look at just how heavy Carson Beck's workload was in 2024 and said never again. Beck had 6 games last year with at least 40 pass attempts, and the focus will definitely be on lowering that number with Stockton. That's not saying they aren't confident in Stockton or don't think he can win them games, but Bobo's offenses have always worked better when the quarterback is a facilitator instead of having to carry the team, especially a quarterback with 1 career start. I don't expect Bobo to be a Broyles Award finalist or anything, and I'm sure the beginning of the season will feature a lot of the quick game, bubble screen stuff that Georgia fans call for his job for every single week. But he has a much better set of weapons this year than he did last season, and I think we're going to learn a lot about Mike Bobo this year. So, color me optimistic about Mike Bobo, I guess. Overall, Georgia's passing game is going to hinge on not just whether or not Gunnar Stockton is good, but whether or not they can actually put him in a position to succeed. I would argue that Georgia had a very good quarterback last year, but the offense wasn't as successful because the combination of drop passes, poor pass protection, and no run game snuffed out any chance the group had of being consistently great. Beck himself wasn't perfect either, but he did about all he could. This year, Georgia needs to have a better run game for anything through the year to work. Defenses didn't need to respect the run as much last year, and it led to Georgia living in third and long situations and needing the passing game to bail them out every time, which it did not do every time. If Georgia ends up having to ask Gunner to put on the cape as much as they did Beck last year, it might not go well. But they did well to address the receiver position in the portal, and added 2 guys with complementary skill sets who should both be impact players right away. There was a ton of investment in this offense over the offseason, and it absolutely needs to return to at least the top half of the SEC in yards per game after finishing 10th last year. I wouldn't expect video game top of the nation numbers from this offense, especially because it's such a new group, but an improvement from last year is pretty much a requirement for Georgia if they want to do anything serious in the postseason. And I think they can do that. If the offensive line can stay healthy and the run game takes the leap it's supposed to, then Stockton can absolutely have a 3,000-yard, 25-touchdown type of year, especially if Branch and Thomas are as good as advertised. I think that would be a big success for this offense and would put Georgia in a pretty good spot come playoff time. Thank you for watching this video if you made it this far, and please subscribe to Georgia, the Voice of College Football, for more Bulldogs content this season. Our goal is to make it to 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and we do a live show every Monday at 7 p.m. We'd love to have you there talking Georgia football with us, so please make sure you tune in. Have a good one.